Before we talk about the specifics of this issue around the decontamination, deep cleaning, whatever you call it, of classrooms, you've also been looking into, for example, procurement of hospital services, beds, fitting out of emergency facilities, and so on. Is there a pattern here that points to a deeper dysfunction that goes across government rather than a problem in a specific department?
You know, John, I think sadly you're absolutely right. There is a pattern. There's a pattern of mismanagement of funds. There's a pattern of wasteful and I think irregular expenditure. And in some ways, I feel that what I've been uncovering is almost the norm.
Yes.
But because we're looking into it, it's possible to kind of paint the picture much more clearly. You know, we can get reports from the Auditor General, that report billions and billions of rands of wasteful and irregular expenditure. And this is what we're seeing. But it's just made all the worse when these millions of rands that are being wasted are being wasted in the context of the COVID-19 epidemic, when there's so much desperation around and when there is so much need for money to be put to good use. You know, Gauteng government has certainly done us a favor by publishing monthly these expenditure disclosure reports, which tally up every cent that is spent by the government and explain where that money is being spent. And that is what I've been basically using, which is going to those reports and digging and then trying to get explanations for the numbers. And this is what we've got to uncover.
So in terms of, let's go a step back before we look at how the money was spent, Mark, and with whom, and ask this question. Is this even effective, and was it part of the national plan that in any way said this absolutely has to be done before kids go back? First of all, was it a necessary service?
Well, John, I mean, first of all, as the Department of Basic Education itself says, there was a lot of anxiety, understandable anxiety amongst parents, amongst school governing bodies, amongst learners, amongst teachers. But we also knew fairly early on in the epidemic that the virus is not airborne and that simple but thorough means of cleaning surfaces are sufficient to decontaminate and make schools and every workplace a safe workplace. So, you know, by March, April, the Department of Basic Education at the national level, the Department of Health, were issuing guidelines that were saying so-called defogging, so-called decontamination is not necessary, is not recommended, and they don't go as far as saying it's wasteful, but what we've clearly uncovered here is that it is wasteful. The problem that my investigation has shown is that despite that, come June 10, the provincial education department began to spend literally millions and millions of rands, and you mentioned it now totals up to 330 million rands on what they call decontamination and deep cleaning, which is just exorbitant and not necessary.
So we're getting a call now. The caller is Arthur Barth, who is with the National Contract Cleaners Association, with some light to shed on this issue. Arthur, good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, John, and good afternoon to all the listeners.
Yes. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm serve on the executive of the National Contract Cleaners Association. That is the industry body representing contract cleaners within South Africa. Our members employ in excess of 100,000 personnel within the cleaning industry. Mm-hmm. And a couple of points. And Mark, first of all, congratulations on a fabulous article. You're right on the money on just about everything in the article. Now, let's first of all deal with the unnecessary nature of the cleaning. You're quite correct in that fogging and spraying is completely unproven scientifically, either by the CDC or the World Health Organization. So it's completely unnecessary. As you said earlier, normal cleaning and disinfection is entirely acceptable from a hygienic perspective. So that's the first point. The second point was the service providers. As I say, I serve on the executive of the National Contract Cleaners Association, And not one of our members, I've actually been through the list of providers. There's only one provider that I recognize, that's Macro in the Vaal, and they scored to the extent of 2,073 Rand and 90 cents.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the other providers, I do not recognize one of them, and I've been in the industry since 1970. So it's quite strange that none of the mainstream players within the industry seem to have participated in this.
Thank you very much, Arthur Barth, calling in from Bosgrain. Thanks as well to Mark Heywood. I'll put up a link to Mark's story. Have a read of it for yourself. Sharpen up the questions that you might want to ask from your local representatives. If you're involved in a school governing body, I'm certain you'd be interested to look at some of the information that's there as well. It's an important story. It's a lot of money. But most importantly, I think we need, if we can, to understand the processes by which this kind of thing happens. It's 3:30 on Afternoon Drive.
News.
Experts.
Analysis.
Where things stand.
What you need to know. Drive home with John Perlman
On 702.